Hello. Can you guys all hear me all right? Oh boy. Well, I can see there's a couple people already here. 1 through 8, Comrade Ace, Don Arnett, and Hoar. Hey everybody. It's your step back. Farewell, Timey. This is the first one since I had the collaboration with Emperor Tiger Star, so there's probably a bunch of new people here. Hello, everybody. Timey, Anarcho Fledgling, and Hellfox, and Blind Pilot, and oh boy. Okay. So, for anybody who is new to Step Back, this is a stream that I optimally do once a week. And I try to talk for about an hour before the new video comes out, which the next Step Back video comes out in 59 minutes. And when it goes live, that's when the stream's over. So it's like a little quick hour-long thing where I talk with you guys and have a good time. And first of all, I should probably say that there's a whole lot of... Okay, there's a bunch of new questions. Oh, hello, Massimiliano. So, everybody. Oh boy, your first son's going to be called Tristan? It's the 8th most hated name, according to one survey, so I hope not. Yeah, so bunch of changes happened in the last little bit. So there was no stream last week because I was last week I had contractors in my apartment and they were working on the bathroom because my landlords decided to get around to fixing the tiles that had fallen off the shower. It was a whole thing. So there was contractors in my apartment all week, and so I couldn't do the stream because they were using power tools and things like that, and that's why I had to go. As you guys probably remembered, I had to film my videos in the library last week because I was too busy. I couldn't do them at home because of all the sound. So that's why I was in the library, and I don't think it sounded all that good, so I don't think I'm going to do it again. However, there has been some other cool changes. So you probably remember that behind here used to be my wife's desk. And so that whole thing was, not like that whole thing was, a whole thing. But I'm actually converting this space into like a little studio. Hey, Michael Collins. So So the corner kind of behind me here is going to become a Step Back, like, recording area. As you can see, my audio shell, that's my audio shell right here. This is a concave thing of foam, of what's it called? Like audio foam. And I'm going to start shooting my videos in the corner here. And so I'm going to have a little bit of the older film style come back, but not at the YouTube space because that place was a nightmare to schedule my shoots with. But there will be some more camera stuff, and I hope to not use that as an excuse to not do animations. But you'll see in this video that comes out today that sometimes it's hard to think of a thing to draw for a certain video subject. So I just think that this will be a way to... I'm going back to the film face style a little bit, just to kind of get things up and running. So I hope that it'll work all right. I think that I'm building up like a little corner here. So you see, I've got all my activisty stuff up in there, and I've got a curio cabinet. You see, there's like some Mexican artifacts there, and so I'm gonna start changing things up. And what else is going on? I started a new job. I got a half-time job, basically working for the Canadian version of the ACLU. So that's a thing. Okay. I guess I should actually get to your questions now that there's like 8 of them. Okay. So the first question comes from ask what the video is about. Okay, that's a pretty easy go-to. This is the video that comes out in the new job is going very well. The new job I finished my first week yesterday, and it's pretty fun. I'm going to be making YouTube videos about civil liberties in Canada. It'll be pretty good. Yeah, it's really cool. So the new video today is a Patreon stretch goal about eugenics and about the eugenics program of North Carolina, because it was originally going to be a video just about eugenics because I was going to make it. But then, like last week, Peter Coffin released a 50-minute video about eugenics, and I was like, well, shit. All right. So I decided to zero down and make a video about a specific eugenics program that happened in North Carolina, and that's going to be the subject of the video, and how it talks about the idea of the ups and downs of eugenics is like the logical extreme of our conception that there are people who are good and people who are bad and people who are deserving of the basic necessities of life and those who aren't, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's like the whole thing, really. And yeah, it's a fun video. It's a very dark video, but one of the things that came out of it, like structure-wise, is I realized that my step back videos need to be I need to introduce camera stuff back into them because sometimes there's just not a clear visual aid or one that's not tasteful, and it's just not a thing that I can continue doing. So expect, starting next week, videos to change up quite a bit. You'll probably see it first when on Monday, when I film my thing. All right. Should bodily integrity be considered a basic human right? So I'm not exactly sure where you're going with this. I do think that definitely bodily integrity should be considered a human right to the extent that I understand. Like, you shouldn't be able to non-consensually force somebody to do something with their body, whether or not that is forcing women to have babies that they do not want to have, such as anti-choice people, or telling people what they can and can't ingest, like prohibition on drugs, or even acts of mutilation, like things like genital mutilation of women, even to a lesser extent circumcision without consent. Like, all those things are attacks on human bodily integrity that I do think that the government does not have the rights to impose. Now, left commentary with the raw milk thing. Hey, step backers. Hey, Isaac. Yeah, so I think that there's probably two ways to think about the way that rights work. Why am I wearing headphones? I'm not even listening to anything. There are two ways to think about the way that rights work. And one would be to say that the role of society, I'm going to say society because as an anarchist, I know that there are times where you do need to impose rules on others, but, to different extents and not by like a state figure. And so the role of society, does it grant rights, i.e., does the world have no rights until you are granted them by the society that you live in, or does society take them away? Do they just take away where the things happen? And those two situations are different ways of thinking about rights. And when it comes to, I hate, because this makes me sound so in like the libertarian, like raw milk libertarian that like left commentary is kind of teasing about, where the idea of like the non-aggression principle, like if you're not hurting anybody, then what reason does anybody have to sort of impose it on you? Now, I don't think that's, I think that needs way more nuance than a lot of libertarians can get, because most libertarians believe in things like a non-aggression principle, but then often have beliefs that are very much against such things, like ideas of trying to, like a lot of libertarians are like, why can't we like practice racial discrimination again? And why can't we practice slavery? And why can't we marry children and weird things like that are all violations of a non-aggression principle? But I think they just think that they just have a very white male idea of what rights are, and that those are the only people that they apply to. But I do think that there is a core in the idea that rights are something that you have just by being alive, that the state or whatever governing body takes away. And so if you want to take away somebody's right to do something, you better have very good reasons for doing it. And if there's not a justifiable reason for doing such a thing, then it shouldn't be done. So there should be as few restrictions on people's ability to do things as possible. But still, I think that for the most part, that's about, keeping society safe and making people, making sure that nobody is abusing and exploiting others. Which means that, something like capitalism, abolishing capitalism is something that you can take away a right for someone to do, because you're creating more freedom and liberty for others by getting rid of inequalities and things like that. All right. I think one of the issues, I think I have like this like exponential issue where I like take way too much time on like the first questions, and then I end up having to rush through them. So I'm going to keep moving along. Don Arnett wants to know what I think of the Trump and Putin summit. So Trump and Putin have met in Helsinki this week, and a whole bunch of stuff is really coming to light. It's showing that if there's something going on between Trump and Putin, which there most definitely is at this point. I mean, after the exposure that came out in the last couple weeks, I think that there's really no doubt in anybody's mind that Russia had quite a huge role to play in the 2016 election. And even though I do think that there are way more ways to look at it than just evil Russians did a thing, the Russians were acting very much in accordance to the geopolitics of the moment. And on top of that, they were exploiting really harsh exploiting big weaknesses in the American political system, and even so, it wouldn't have been effective if the Democrats hadn't run the least popular candidate in American, or the second least popular candidate in American history. The first most least popular was Trump himself. And so, honestly, I do think that because the Democrats dropped the ball so hard on mounting a good opposition and having anything to vote for in 2016, that the Democrats, that I think that the Russian meddling in the election is in some ways a little bit given too much credit for what it did. And I do think that the election definitely could have been done better if the Democrats had, campaigned in places. Robbie Mook. I feel like Robbie Mook, his reputation got away with way too much because of the bad things he did during the election. All right. Hoar asks, were you ever a member of any political/activist organization? Yes. I am currently, when I was younger, I was a member of the the Ontario Green Party because I needed to get volunteer hours to graduate high school. And I have for very, for very cynical reasons, have joined political parties in the past. In the 2015 election, I was part of an organization that was trying to get people to vote for whoever had the best chance of beating the Conservatives in their given riding, because the Liberals and the NDP had both promised in the election that they were going to repeal first past the post voting. And, you can't have a democratic election until that has been removed. So really the only goal should be to get rid of the Conservatives wherever you are. That, of course, backfired, and I, of course, regret that, and I will never vote Liberal ever again. I then joined the NDP last fall in order to vote for Nikki Ashton to lead the NDP. That didn't work out either because Jagmeet Singh, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I also, I guess I wasn't a member, but I participated with my time. I actually made some videos for the NDP candidate that ran in my riding, and she won her riding. So there's that. I mean, the Conservatives still won overall, and Ontario is right now going to have quite a rough ride over the next few years. So I would say that but that was something I did. And I still legitimately think that you can be a leftist and an anarchist and still participate in the political discourse and political organization outside of just radical groups, because honestly, imposing and making the world that you think is making a better world doesn't just include creating a perfect world, but includes making a world that will be better tomorrow for more people. And I do think that if I can push the political discourse and the systems of the world more left-wing with whatever tools are available, I'll do it. And so I very much will get involved in elections to try and push more left-wing candidates and more left-wing political discourse, because I think that if there's one thing that a lot of anarchists have been missing out on, is that anarchism is supposed to have a high emphasis on praxis. And that means that you don't just sit around debating theory and philosophy all day, but you actually get out there and do the things that you want to do to make the world better. And sometimes that involves doing things that aren't great. And sometimes I think that it means that you got to just do whatever you can with the tools that are available to you, and hopefully push the world in a better direction in the longer term. And sometimes that means helping out and undermining the capitalist system, direct action. I do think things like biking co-ops and time banking and free stores and things like that are really great examples of anarchist praxis that I totally think are awesome. I also think that when there are big things about like the state trying to change, if you have the opportunity to push the state to be less like a state, then do that as well. But, you know, take what you can get, I guess. All right. I'm in the countryside in Dalarna, the place where those red wooden horses come from right now. How are you guys spending your summer? Well, Sir Zhao Zhao, I just got a new job, so I think that it's a whole thing. Like, I don't know. This is my first summer where I'm no longer really involved with school. And so this is my first summer where the summer is pretty much not that different from the rest of the year. I have a job. I go to work. I go to the office. I ride the subway. I put in my hours. I go home. I cook dinner, and I work on step back videos and go to bed. And then the second half of the week, I work on step back videos and then go to bed. So it's pretty, this hasn't really changed all that much in like a year. My wife is going to join, my wife is going to a wedding next week, so I'll be on my own. So really the summer's been pretty normal. All right. Michael Collins, is YouTube really allowing self-demonetization? Yes, actually. Well, it sounds worse than it is. So what's going on is YouTube has a pilot program that it's trying out with a few creators who get demonetized regularly, but that their appeals are often overturned with human intervention. So channels like mine, where often subjects and tags and metadata lead to the algorithm trying to get demonetized. And often that happens, but then when you appeal it, it gets remonetized, and that's happened to a lot of my videos. So what they've started to roll out is a program for people like that, where if your stuff is educational and important and rides the line, if you are able to demonetize videos. So basically when I upload a video, I set whether or not it's going to be monetized on the upload page. And as long as I don't abuse it, I am able to get my videos that I think are monetized without any issues. And what they are hoping is that with a select few people who are in a certain sort of area of YouTube, that you can self-police yourself. And when you know that you're going to put up something that is going to cause issues with advertisers, you will demonetize the video yourself. But if you're doing something that is in the gray area, but you think is acceptable, then you're allowed to do it. And I have that, and I have demonetized a few of my videos because I know that people are not going to want to do that. So in my mind, I think it's a good solution for people like myself who are educators who do videos on subjects that ride close to areas of demonetization, but not quite what people are thinking of. All right. Why hasn't Canada changed the national anthem from "Oh Canada" to "Blame Canada"? That's more of a comment than a question. Comrade Ace wants to know, have you watched The Man in the High Castle? I've watched a few episodes of it. I've watched the pilot for The Man in the High Castle so many times because I really want to like The Man in the High Castle. I have tried to watch it on several occasions and gotten a few episodes deep at different times, but I can never keep it going. I can never keep my interest in it alive. And I don't know what it says about it, but honestly, the show as well actually seems to, the show is like that, but also the book is like that for me. So like I'll get like a few episodes into the show and be like, oh my gosh, like it's just I guess it's just not what I was expecting. And then I've read the book. I've read most of the book, and I got to the point where I couldn't really keep the book going either, because I was just like, this book is all world building and it doesn't really have a plot. And I think this is a fault of a lot of alternate history novels and alternate history stories, where the idea behind the story is really good and the alternate history is interesting. But then they forget that the book also has to be like a story, and the plot is so dedicated to just being a platform to show off the world building that often the story falls short. And so you end up with so much description of the politics of the world that you just can't go. Another novel that's really like this is the novel by Harry Turtledove called In the Balance, which I could not. I've tried like on at least 3 occasions to read, and I cannot read because it literally spends the first 100 pages introducing like 10 point of view characters, because they need to show the conflict of the world by so many different standpoints that it loses its story, and then it really isn't telling a compelling narrative. And I think this is an issue that comes up in a lot of alternate history that if I were to write an alternate history story, heaven forbid, I do think that I would focus my thing on building a compelling story with good characters, good drama, and a good plot before I worry about the outcome of the election between Abraham Lincoln and, I don't know, like a literal werewolf or something. Like, I think that if I were to do an alternate history scenario, the scenario should be in service of the story. And that I think a lot of alternate history people start with the alternate history and then the story comes second. And I think that what alternate history really is good for exploring is just how different the world could be, but using such a thing to explore various aspects of human nature and trying to build up what kind of thing you do. Like, for example, in The Balance, not to give away the story for anybody, but basically aliens invade during World War II, and all of the very different ideologies have to find some way to stop World War II in progress in order to defeat aliens. And kind of talking about like the bigger threat makes people put aside their differences in weird ways. And I mean, there's some troubling implications of that, but still, I think that you need to think things more about that. Okay. All right. Let's see. So is Mandela's 100th birthday, and the other day, Tristan, want to talk about that? Mandela is not a perfect person, but probably did a lot of good things. I think that I honestly am. I don't have a hate boner for Nelson Mandela. The guy has freed a lot of people from a really shitty situation, and I mean, not having perfect politics doesn't mean that. Like, I don't know. Nelson Mandela was a good person. He did good things. What exactly are you, a social dem or a democratic socialist? I consider myself an anarcho-syndicalist or part of the generic ANCON or AN-pacifist sort of bubble. I consider myself generically part of the anarchist left. Unfortunately, most people in that area would not agree with me. As you can see, there's a lot of people in the chat who are getting quite worked up about my like whole like maybe you should participate in the political process because praxis, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that oftentimes my attempts to try to be practical in my attempts to be practical, and also my pacifist ideas, the idea that violence is not only morally and ethically wrong, but it's not productive towards long-term change. I think both get me in a lot of trouble with anarchists, and so I'm sure a lot of them would just call me a liberal or something, some slur that they can think of. But you know, I am what I am. I'm not beholden to follow rank and file with any particular ideology, and I do really like works like The Conquest of Bread. I think The Conquest of Bread is probably one of my favorite works of political writing, and yeah. All right. Only Bro 555. If the USA were to balkanize, how would it happen, and what would be the new nations? Step back history. All right, so Only Bro, I think that there's one thing that doesn't come up enough, that I do think that if the US were to, quote-unquote, balkanize, basically break apart, what would the borders look like? And I think that the borders would not... The breaking up of the United States would probably be based mostly on urban centers. There's a lot of people in modern day human geography who are already suggesting that the world in general in the 21st century is becoming so urbanized that you could pretty much organize the world with like a city-state model, and things would probably work a lot better. And so if the United States were to balkanize, I imagine you would have sort of one state that would be this eastern corridor, so the Boston, New York City like thing that goes all the way down probably to the south, actually. I would probably think that there would be another one on the West Coast that from all the way up in Seattle all the way down to like San Diego. And then you would probably have a few other major urban centers. Like there's sort of a Midwest blob made up of like Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, things like that. And that would probably be one of the blobs. And probably there would be a Texas-y one as well. But I think where things would get more interesting and less organized would be in the less developed states. I do think that in areas like the American Southwest or in the prairies, without the ability to have the larger cities and other areas to depend upon to kind of keep your industry running, I do think that those regions would have to become a lot more self-sufficient, and so they would have to develop their own urban areas. And I would actually think that a lot of those, more or less, that where I would go for what I would do, or what I would guess. All right, let me see here. All right. Hope that answers your question, Only Bro. I do think that if you want to, if you're like an alternate history person who likes to break up regions and things like that, look at urban. Yeah, I feel like I'm getting lost again, but yeah, and there's a book called, I think it's called Connectography, that is a really good book for understanding this. I think that if you want to read something, you should read Connectography to understand how the world is changing to be more city-focused. Okay, what do you think of Spain should do with Franco's body? Oh, wait, that's a little bit down. Michael Kirschner wants to know, what have you done? Have you seen the new Sacha Baron Cohen show? I have not. I've heard it's good, but I haven't seen it yet. Tristan, I would like to ask you a question concerning my country, Spain. Dictator Franco was buried after his death in a huge mausoleum under a 30-meter stone Catholic cross that was built by the Republican prisoners. Okay. Do you think that what do you think Spain should do with Franco's body? I think that is a question I can't really answer because I was not I am not part of Spanish culture, and history is difficult. Honestly, if I were given free reign to do whatever I wanted, I would probably keep such a construction because it was still made with the labor of a lot of people, but I would probably turn it into a memorial to the Spanish Civil War and the victims of the dictatorial regime of Spain. And so I'd probably add a museum about the darkness of that period and about the horrors of fascist Spain, and also a memorial to those who died in the Spanish Civil War and those that gave their lives to save democracy, even if they failed. And on top of that, make that the final resting place of Franco, the symbol of fascism in Spain. And I do think that if you were to make something like that, Spain would need to be a country, or I think that it would be a way to be a memorial to the war in general and that period of Spain in general. Because I do think that getting rid of Franco's memorial in some ways would be trying to forget about what happened. And I do think that Spain should not forget when it flirted with fascism. And I do think that it just needs to be recontextualized. What's your opinion on fermentative action? I'm not exact fermentative action like fermentation, like when you make beer. Well, as a borderline alky, sometimes I would say I love fermentative action. If you're referring to affirmative action, I would say that affirmative action is good, especially it is good when you are dealing with an unjust society. I think that the comic that shows the difference between equality, equity, and justice is really good. Where there's this wall where there's like a baseball game going on, and there's a wall, and there's three different people who are of three different heights, and two of them are too short to see over the wall and watch the baseball game. And so equality would be everybody gets one box to stand on. So only the tallest kid and the second tallest kid can see. Equity, which is what we would need to do in the current situation we're in, is where the boxes are redistributed so that everybody can see the game. And then justice is a situation that would be preferable if you can deal with it, which is to get rid of the fence altogether, or get rid of the wall and replace it with just a fence, so that the source of injustice has been removed and there's no longer a need for the box. But even so, I do think that equity is a good stepping stone in how to deal with a unequal situation. Don't worry, Jonathan Sims. I'll get to the Civil War thing because I do think that the Franco Memorial is very different from the Civil War thing. All right, Jonathan Sims, what do you think of Bad Mouse when he keeps making his bad takes? I actually don't see Bad Mouse's bad takes. I've heard about them, but I haven't seen any of them. His channel has been a ghost town for like almost a year now. So I don't think I know enough to talk about it, but, if he's starting to skirt into Marxism-Leninism, I would not be a fan. Marxism-Leninism is bad. Okay. Only Bro, you had your question answered. Left commentary. Would you do a piece on the American Indian movement, especially Wounded Knee 2? I think Lefty Commentary, have you asked me to make a video about the second Wounded Knee before? Because I thought I've had somebody ask me about it. And if you're the second person to ask me about it, then I will definitely bump it up. But if you are the same person, then I will, I'll evaluate it whenever I get to it. But the American Indian movement would be really good. Well, Ian Moore, if this is your first stream, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you are here. Well, Framium, do you think that there's a future that for someone that studies history in college? I am a communications coordinator for the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. So, and I have a degree in history, so I guess there is something you can do with it. As far as like doing a degree in history, I do think that there are career paths to go down. They're a bit more difficult, and I will say that you need to think more about the skills you're learning rather than the content you're learning. History majors are a really good stepping stone for going to law school. They're a really good stepping stone for going into politics and the nonprofit sector. You learn a lot of important skills that are important for careers, like effective communication skills, presentation skills, writing, and research and critical analysis. And I think that these are all very important skills that haven't been talked about as much. And I do think they do. I think that with a history degree, you still can do things. I just think that you can get away with that. Yeah. I do think that it is more complex, though. So you do have to switch that. You do have to work a little bit at it. You have to be a bit more creative. I know, Hellfox, you made a review of the Step Back History channel. You didn't like my background, if I recall correctly. You were very nice otherwise, but yeah. I'm working on it. Unfortunately, that set that you liked is actually no longer exists. It was at the YouTube space, and it was only up for the wintertime, and they tore it down. Big Seltzer, did you hear that corrupt Joe Crowley is still running against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as an independent? Yes, and that sucks. I really don't like that people are doing that. All right, what's the difference between socialism and communism? Communism is a form that Marx wrote about, in which it is a stateless society that has no masters, no gods, it is a state of pure equality that would come out of a communist revolution. But socialism is when a state tries to organize itself under Marxist principles, sometimes as a self-described transition towards communism, or just as using Marxist principles in order to create more justice in society. And really, if you are trying to make a communist society using the state, you become a tanky. You become what people would call a communist today. But then there's like forms that want to transition through a slow and democratic and not violent process that typically tend to be like democratic socialists. Then there are people who have Marxist sympathies, but they are very gradualist, and they do not want the full eradication of capitalism tend to be like social democrats. So there's different ways. I do think that yeah, that's the main difference. Are you a real socialist? Have you ever seized the means of production? Well, I guess I'll have to teach you how to be an anarchist. I don't know what that means. Have I ever seized the means of production? Kinda. I've found a way to make my job without any sort of boss, which is kind of neat. Um, all right, yeah. Any socialist, okay, the socialists that use authoritarian tactics to bring about communism are called tankies. They're authoritarian communists. Why don't you like capitalism? Well, Hell Fox, capitalism is a fundamentally unstable way of organizing government or organizing society. It uses the exploitation of human psychology to drive need, but as has been shown over and over again, capitalist economies tend to be extremely unequal, and whenever something is exposed to market forces and capitalists' forces, they move towards greater and greater inequality and periods of boom and bust. And I do think that whenever these busts happen, poor people pay for it. And it encourages organizing people into different classes, specifically encouraging sexism, racism, homophobia, colonization, things like that. Because it's all about the unequal distribution of wealth. And if you can find different ways to justify not giving people wealth, then you'll do it. And so it is an economic ideology based entirely on the oppression of others. Form praxis instead of joining a political party and doing political party work. Make a cooperative, do food, not bombs, unionize, strike, protest, and etc. Yeah, only bro 555. I think those are all really good things that people should do. I think that they should also do other things. I think that going to your food, not bombs protest and also helping politics move more left wing are both acts of praxis. All right. Wolframium. Do you think that there is a future for historians? That is a very good question. I hope so, but I am not optimistic with given budget cuts and everything like that. Tristan, did you hear Cody's getting married? Yes, I did hear. They were on their way back from their trip, and their flight got canceled, and they were in Toronto, and they asked me to give them a ride to Windsor, and I didn't have a car, so I did hear that he referred to her as his fiancée. So, yeah, I have heard. What's that's nothing to do with me. Did you know that there's a name for alternative history? It's called Ukraine. Okay, that's cool. Speaking of alternative history, I haven't seen So That Happened in a while. How's Cody's book coming along? It's going. He's really busy right now with his book. He has been. He just got back from a trip, and I know that he is like going crazy. Trying to pump out as much books as many pages as possible. I think he's like really burning the candle at both ends. I imagine he's going to burn himself out, but he's a young guy, so he lives fast. That's kind of if you work with Cody behind the scenes, one thing you'll learn about him is he is a person that goes from 0 to 100 very fast when it goes to work, and so he's very like I imagine that in school. He was the kind of guy who did his essay the night before it was due and stayed up all night to do it. When we were doing our collaboration together back in the fall, he had routinely told me that he had been doing like multiple all-nighters in order to get the video done on time. He is very much a 100, like a 0 to 100 type person like that. Michael Collins. Speaking of alternate history, I haven't seen. Oh, that was all right. When does a good person who has done some bad things become a bad person who has done some good things? That is very much dependent upon the scale of the good and bad things that they have done. Ending apartheid in South Africa is a pretty good thing, and having a few problematic points of view don't really make up for that. saying that you're a Marxist while actually being a state capitalist and murdering tens of millions of people who don't agree with you and starving the people of the Ukraine, that is more bad than good. All right, Girthax, did you see that 3 Arrows' most recent video debunking alt-right South Africa propaganda? I haven't, but I'm excited to watch it. 3 Arrows is one of my favorite YouTube channels, and I have, yeah, I think that 3 Arrows is a good YouTube channel. I'm just like a week behind on YouTube videos, so I'm still catching up. Someone know, what is Juche? It's like nationalist communism. It's like the worst thing ever. Have you given any thoughts to my not Russian bot idea of a video about Holocaust victims being denied asylum in the USA and Canada? That is a very good one, actually. I think I should because in our current climate where we are so cruel towards refugees, I do think that doing something about the Holocaust refugees would be a really good idea. So I'm writing it down. Okay. Do you think Native American reservations should be made into full nation states, or would that go against your disapproval of ethno states? I do think that that Indigenous Americans reservations should not be ethno states. I think that that's not the path to go down. That would make anybody work out. I do think that reservations are resource poor enough that they would not be able to be functionally self-sufficient, and they need outside support to function. Very often they need like supplies like airdropped and delivered to them, and some of the biggest humanitarian crises in Canada deal with the fact that we have places where Indigenous people are living that need critical resources that we do not have the roads and infrastructure to get that to them. And so we're working on trying to fix that. And I do think that for those communities, what would be better is that if we treated the relationship more as a tendency, where we made sure that Indigenous people were kept in a, were given all of the rights and privileges that come with the fact that we are basically living on their territory for them. You know, paying, I think that making sure that they don't have to worry about anything is pretty good for, like they should not have to worry about most things in life because they are living on, or they have territory that we have stolen. I do think that finding ways to make them economically thrive and be happy and get all the things that they are entitled to, as well as maintaining their sovereignty and maintaining their ability to keep themselves, keep their culture, keep their language, and things like that can be accomplished, and you would not need states to do such a thing. Is lab-grown meat moral? Yes. I think lab-grown meat is a great idea. I'm actually very excited about it. I think that it's one of the biggest changes that we could make to deal with climate change. Make a video on the Mughal Empire. Alrighty. I think I actually had that on my list already, but I will add that. Jonathan Sims, this sounds dangerously close to a boozing. Okay, so Civil War memorials are very different. I do think that there's a lot about the design of Civil War memorials, especially the fact that there's so many of them and that they're cheap and they're crappy and they were propped up to oppose the civil rights movement, means that you really don't need them. If I were to, the idea that the Franco's memorial is where his body is interred, and it's already a huge structure. I feel like those two things together will mean that you should probably recontextualize it and build it into a memorial. I do think that when it comes to like Civil War Confederate statues, that tearing down all but one and recontextualizing that one as like, yeah, we used to be really racist and think that these kinds of people were good people, and maybe have an even bigger statue right beside it of a slave breaking from its chains, or breaking from their chains. I don't know why I said it. That sounded really horrible. I was thinking about the chains. I think that, and the fact that it's an inanimate object, it's a statue. But I do think that that would be a good way to address it. Get rid of all these shitty, like, anti-civil rights statues across the South. There's way too many of them, and they don't stand for any sort of justice. Okay. So Israel just passed a controversial bill. Heard of it? No, I have not, Waldo. Why are you against the Jews having their own state? I'm against anybody having their own state, Jews or otherwise. I don't think people should own territory. I think that is a concept that has caused more issues than solved. Michael Collins, Tristan, could you make a video about the battle for Castle Itter? It's not a well-known battle in World War II. I mean, I could look into it, but I'm not really good at the battles thing. But I'll take a look. If there's an angle that actually works for what Step Back is about, then maybe. But I really am not a good person for military history at all. Hey, Ron. Welcome aboard. You made it just in time. Gerrymandering, add that. And race. That's a good one. All right. Could you do a video about the battle for Castle Itter? We did that. How much have you read about South Asian history? Not enough, Sam. And I feel bad about that. Marxism-Leninism is the only scientific form of socialism. I mean, if you call Marxism-Leninism a form of socialism, it had money and practiced capitalism, and anybody who disagreed with the state or who were even thinking about having any form of dissent were put in prison or killed. So kind of violates most of how Marx envisioned the world should work, but okay. If you think that the scientific form of socialism is to do literally the opposite of everything Marx talked about, then sure, why not? Do you think that David Graeber's assertion that only right-wing populist president can end U.S. imperialism? I saw him say this in an interview, and I'm not sure what he was talking about. I think he's talking about accelerationism, which I don't like the idea of, but holy shit, does it seem to be prescient. Because the Overton window with this right-wing populist president has seemed to open up a lot more political discourse than I expected. And so I was very surprised. But I think he's talking about accelerationism. Immaculate contraception. Why are you against you? Oh, you okay? Yeah, this is just a troll. Okay, Valentine. I remember me. I think I do remember you. Hello. Anarcho-Tristanism. Oh man, you don't want that. You don't want me having an ideology named after me. It would be, oh man, everyone would hate them because everybody hates me sometimes when I talk this shit. Dawan Narnet, would you consider Putin a communist? Nope. He is a right-wing nationalist. He's closer to a fascist than a communist. Chow Modus, what is that metal thing behind you? This is an audio shell. If you look on the inside, it's soundproof foam. So I put my microphone there when I'm recording. All right. No more questions. I have a few more questions. I'm going to answer them. It might go over by a couple minutes, and then we're gonna wrap up the stream. Can you do a video about the darker side of the Falun Gong? I think you sent this to me in a comment a few days ago. I will look into it, but I know it's like a form of Taoism that I really don't. Oh, hey Romeo. I'll take a look. I really want to start a YouTube account and join the internet leftosphere. However, I only have 3/5 of an art qualification, no academic background in politics. Should I do it anyway? Sure. Just give it a try. The hardest thing about starting a YouTube channel is just starting. I do think that, all right, Immaculate, you are banned. Okay. So let me just yeah, Jenga Tree 121, you should totally get involved and try to make some videos. Just try to figure out, I would say, you don't need much of an art style. I started with the free Google Drive version of PowerPoint to make my first videos, and you can always build up from there. And I think on top of that, like the first cartoon version of me was drawn with like circles and stuff from Google Slides, and that's actually what Cody used when he was first starting the Alternate History Hub. So it's not hard to do. The main thing, though, is you should put a lot of effort into thinking about what your niche is going to be. If you're doing the exact same content, over and over and over again, you need to stand out. Like the leftist sphere on YouTube is a community where people are making different types of things, and you really need to figure out what your angle is going to be. ContraPoints, she's the creator. She does the artistic stuff. Her videos are very humorous. They're very story driven. You have the sort of histrionic media focused style of H Bummer Guy. You have Thought Slime being a goofball. You have, I guess, me doing the history stuff. You have Peter Coffin doing the everything is like kind of doing the social study of identity and Marxism. So like you have to figure out about what your angle is. And I think that once you get that, then you can go from there. But I do think that if you're to recommend a book for getting yourself into YouTube, there's actually Tim Schmoyer's book, 30 Days to a Better YouTube Channel, is a book that I've recommended to many upstart YouTubers, including like Will Fox from The Exploration, who has like 100,000 subscribers. Like I think that it is a book that everybody should read if you want to do a YouTube channel. That's a good way to start. If you're talking about just like leftist like stuff, you should probably read The Conquest of Bread. And it'd be pretty cool to read The Conquest of Bread and 30 Days to a Better YouTube Channel in the same breath. I think that'd be really interesting. On top of that, Primal Branding actually would be a pretty good one as well. So those are all good books to hack away at to get started with a YouTube channel. But think a lot about how you're going to approach things. One of the things that Thought Slime was started with was he doesn't know. It's not an audio, it's now a cat house for now. So Thought Slime started with, he doesn't know a whole lot about Marxist theory and things like that, but he knows how to be funny because he was a stand-up comic. So that's how he got his start. So like, you got to think about how you're going to do it. Yeah. Jenga Tree 121, the last thing I would say to that is it was Hank Green who said that the best advice to get somebody to get started on YouTube is to get started. Just make your first video. Once you've made a video, then you can go from there. Is 10 Days That Shook the World a good book? I don't think I've read that one. All right. Can you do a video about racial gerrymandering? We covered that. All right. Ron has the last question. Would you be interested or willing to do a video about the people who wrote An Appeal to Law and Order and Common Sense? I am not sure. Let's take a look. I will look into it. Appeal to Law and Order. Dun, dun. And Common Sense. All right. Yeah, Jenga Tree, let me know when you start making videos. All right. Everybody, this has been quite a crazy stream. I hope you guys had a good time. I'll get the link to the new video so that you can go and watch it. I hope it's scheduled to go live. That would have been really dumb if I forgot to do that. Yep, it's live. So, yep, I'm going to give you guys a link in the chat. Oh, you want to see the cat? Here. Romeo. Okay. Let me just. Oh. All right. So you guys have seen him a few times. So this is Romeo. He's a pretty good cat. He's very soft. But yeah, there you go. You guys have an amazing week, and I'll see you guys next Thursday.